Hi, I'm Tim, and I run the Conquest of Dread YouTube channel. We're going to do something a little bit different this time. Obviously, this is the first time I've ever actually appeared on camera in one of these videos, but also we're going to do a bit of a Q&A. This is my 10th video, so I thought it would be cool to kind of do something a little bit different, and I think I'm going to do a couple more in the future, maybe every 10 videos or so. So, what I did was put out a call through YouTube, Twitter, Curious Cat, everything, just asking for questions for what you guys wanted to know about me, what I do, who I am, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I got a bunch of questions together. I narrowed it down to my 20 favorites, and I'm gonna go through one by one and answer them, and you guys can just get to know me a little bit. All right, first question coming from Byron Clark, who's another YouTuber from New Zealand. If you could replace the cast of any movie with the Muppets and keep one human actor, which movie do you choose and which actor do you keep? So I thought about this one a lot because I'm a big cinema fan. And I think what I would do is actually take one of my favorite movies, Tarkovsky's Stalker. But instead of keeping the Stalker as a human and replacing everyone else with Muppets, I think everyone would be a Muppet aside from Monkey. That would be what I would choose. Okay, Adam Bowman asks, I'd be interested in you going through your process for making videos, from getting ideas to research, conceptualizing, and editing, as well as how long these roughly take. Okay, Adam, well, it's a little bit different for every video. Some of them take me quite a long time. Sometimes they take me 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes they only take me a couple of days. It depends on what they're about and how much I know about the topic already, how much of a clear vision I have of what I want to create, and the techniques that I'm going to use to create the video. So for simple ones, like say the video I made about Greedfall, everything in that video was stuff I already knew about quite intimately. Like it's something that I have a lot of personal experience with. So it was pretty easy for me to put that video together. And because it's quite the classic video essay kind of format with a lot of moving pictures and stuff instead of actual animated content, it was super fast. I did it in a couple of days. I did it I found out about it like maybe the day Greedfall came out, and I put the video out maybe 2 or 3 days later. So that was super quick, whereas other ones like the Decolonizing Games video or the one Dark Systems, those ones took me quite a long time because they have actually a lot more stuff that required a little bit more hands-on animation from me, and even just recording, and a lot of the music I do from just putting together loops and samples and things like that. Like I don't often use full audio, like royalty-free tracks like a lot of people do. So sometimes that can take me a lot of time just getting that sounding right. So yeah, it depends on what I'm doing. But yeah, that's kind of why I can't really ever promise a really stable release kind of schedule. Like a lot of people will make a video every week or every month or something like that. I can't really do that. But I can promise that when I do put out a video, it's always going to be exactly how I wanted it to look at the time, because I'm going to take the time to really get it looking that way. Anon asks, have you ever streamed any RPGs or video games, or do you plan to? This is actually something I get a lot because, I've done a lot of content about games and RPGs, and I've, talk about that stuff quite a lot on Twitter. And it is something that I've talked to with other creators quite a lot. There's a group of us that have talked about maybe putting something together, like doing, putting together a stream or even a YouTube channel where it's just us, playing an RPG or something like that, just streaming it out, but also actually creating little edited episodes and putting them up. So yeah, it's definitely something that is being explored, and you might see in the future. I don't know exactly when, but yeah, maybe keep an eye out for something like that, maybe sometime this year. What political system is your fave? Okay, this one is interesting because they asked, what is my fave? They didn't say, which do I think is the best, what will work the best in real life, what has the most merit or anything like that. They just asked what my favorite was. So it's always gonna be Posadism. Just always. It's like the best combo of all the things I like. It's got nuclear apocalypse, alien comrades, psychic dolphins. I mean, what else could you want? That's everything. It's like the intro to Fallout or something like that. But I mean, like, honestly, there is little bits of Posada's work that is quite interesting, and I think is applicable to a lot of leftist kind of tendencies. I wouldn't ascribe too much merit to the system as a whole, but I just really like it, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. I'm Curious Cat, Tanky Anarchist, or something else? Definitely something else. I mean, I think that both of those concepts, I mean, like, anarchist is a wide umbrella. There's a lot of anarchist tendencies, some which I really like, others not so much. And tanky, kind of like, it depends on who you're talking to, what tanky means, you know? So I really liked an answer that I think Jamie Elizabeth gave on the Surf's stream once, where she said these days she refers to herself as a little C communist. So, you know, like, I'm in favor of moving politics in that direction. Like, I want to move things considerably far left, further left than a lot of people. But I'm not sure exactly which kind of system I think would be the best to implement at this point. But I think that, getting closer, as we shift things closer to the left, maybe we can start figuring that out a little bit more. I do definitely have my own preferences, but I feel like that's an ongoing discussion for me, figuring out exactly what I would identify as, even if that is something I could say. Like, I don't know if I could just like pitch my tent in one camp definitively at this point. Cowardly Anon asks, is it fair that Māori can just claim back land from private ownership when they feel like it? What about the people that live there? If a white person did that, it would be stealing. Yes. And it was stealing when white people did it, and that's why the Waitangi Tribunal exists. So all the land that you see getting claimed back by tribunal hearings and everything like that, that's land that was seized after the treaty was signed. So they set up the laws and then they were broken. So land was stolen, it was confiscated without real reason or anything that really has held up, any reasoning that has held up over time. So looking back on it now, we can say this land was unfairly taken and it needs to be redressed. So it would be stealing, and it was. And it's important to note that private land can't be claimed back through the Waitangi Tribunal. That's a completely different thing, and that's why cases like Ihumatao were actually kind of a lot more complicated than a lot of people thought. So if you're living in a house and you're worried about some mythical Maori coming and taking it from you, it's like, that's just a fantasy. That's not going to happen. And when people are already living there and the Crown has to award a settlement, give money back to the iwi that the land was taken from, because they can't give the land back because people are there, they only ever get like 1 or 2% of the total value of what it would be anyway. Imagine how much money they could have made off that property if they were able to hold on to it for the entire time. There's just no equating it whatsoever. Another Anon asks, I really like the aesthetic you have for your YouTube videos. Do you feel like your tattoo work helps you inform the visuals for them? Okay, so for those who don't know, I have mentioned it in my videos before. By day, I'm a tattoo artist, and I also do like graphic design, and I had a period doing photography and all that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't say that there is anything specifically about my work as a tattoo artist that informs the aesthetic I use for my videos. But I look at it more like in a holistic sense, where everything I've done contributes to what I am doing now. Whereas I've picked up so many little things, like this pretty wide skill set over the years, just from dabbling here and there. And I use all of those skills in making videos. You know, like when I'm laying out an image or whatever, I'm thinking about it the way that I would compose an image with a camera, or if I'm putting together like an infographic, I'm leaning on my graphic design history. Like tattooing is such a broad thing that there are little bits about composition and color and everything that I've learned through that get applied to making videos. It's, yeah, like I said, it's more of a holistic thing. Like, I think I draw from every element of my life. Anon asked, do you believe metal band names such as have the potential to be triggering to metalheads who are victims of sexual assault? I mean, yeah, like I think that many things can be triggering to people that have had those experiences or have like PTSD and stuff like that. Definitely there's a difference in extreme metal between there's groups that kind of glorify violent or, you know, like kind of, I don't know, like they glorify certain behavior in a way that is like unhealthy and I definitely don't agree with. But then there are groups that kind of sing or, you know, write songs about these things in kind of more like a cheesy old school horror movie kind of way. I mean, like groups like Death, when they write metal songs, it's kind of just like this ridiculous kind of like pulp horror kind of vibe. Whereas, you know, then you get more like Thy Art Is Murder and all that kind of corny stuff that it is kind of like, it's pretty misogynistic in tone in a lot of their songs and stuff. And I don't like that stuff personally. Yeah, I mean, aside from just it's not my kind of music or whatever, I think that a lot of those dudes, like I've seen a lot of conversations online and they're like, these people complaining like, why aren't there more like women or minorities involved in these scenes and stuff? And it's like, man, like, you know, you got your biggest song is about like cutting up a sex worker with a chainsaw, like, you know, like what do you expect? So yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Another thing is that when it's like a band's name or something like that, and it's the first thing you see, sometimes that can be bad for people where, you know, like if they see like a poster or something and it's got the band name on it and they've been exposed to something that, you know, could be quite triggering for them with very little agency on whether they wanted to engage with that or not. Whereas if it's like something that's on an album that, you know, if someone is familiar with the style of metal or they know what that band's about and they can go and they can seek those things out and that's totally fine, but it's not really gonna, you know, like affect someone that isn't choosing to be affected by it, then that's a little bit different. But yeah, personally, I'm not a big fan of that kind of stuff. You have a really nice voice. Do you or have you ever sung in a band? You look like a band boy. Band boy. I have been in bands before, like nothing super serious. Me and my brother have done like a couple musical projects over the years, and I've been in like a couple of shitty kind of like punk and metal bands and stuff. Nothing that I ever kind of devoted too much time to. It was always kind of, it was never the main priority at the time. So, you know, we didn't really stick to it that far, but we did, you know, played some big shows and stuff. I'm not going to tell you any of the band's names or anything, so don't ask. But yeah, but I mean, it has been a thing that has like popped up here and there over the years, and maybe we'll do something in the future. I don't know. We'll see. Who are your favorite YouTubers or other media figures? Okay, well, I don't get too much time to actually watch a lot of YouTube videos from other people these days. Well, not at the moment anyway. I'm super busy with work, and then actually creating videos takes a lot of time in itself. But some of my favorites are, I really like Curio, I really like The Surfs, Thought Slime, and all those people actually have been really helpful, you know, getting my own stuff together and getting it out there and stuff. And you know, aside from that, I like a lot of stuff from different corners of YouTube. So yeah, there's like the kind of lefty stuff, like all of them, plus you know, like my friends like Gushin and Byron Clark does really good videos as well. But then probably my favorite is this weird musician guy called Jack Stauber, who makes this kind of like weird kind of like indie rock kind of music, but he like hand makes and animates these weird stop motion VHS music videos for a lot of his songs. And it's super fascinating to me because it's obviously the work of a singular, very driven person who has a very defined idea of the art that he wants to create. And he just does it, whether it's like a random 5-second clip that sometimes he animates stuff on computer, like low poly kind of stuff. Sometimes it's, like made out of plasticine and stop motion, or sometimes it's him and his friends cut up and kind of animated and stuff. And that kind of stuff to me is super fascinating, not just because of the technical kind of aspect, but the artistic vision, I think, behind it. All right, so this is a big multi-question kind of cheat one from Thought for Food. Here we go. Who's your biggest inspiration? Does your video's vaporwave cyberpunk-like style have a deeper meaning, or is it just aesthetic? What inspires you to make a video about a certain topic, and how did you decide to start making videos in the first place? Do you have pets, and if no, would you want one? And last but not least, how are you this awesome? Your video quality is through the roof, and it's downright criminal how little subscribers you have. Much love from the Netherlands. So I've already answered a couple of these and other questions about my inspiration and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna kind of address the other ones here. So the aesthetic, does it have a deeper meaning? No, it's like I kind of said earlier, it's just inspired by all the things around me, the things I like. I mean, I could probably say something deep about, the kind of cyberpunky kind of stuff, and that's the world we're living in or something, but it's really not that deep. It's just that this is a way that I like to present things, and when I'm making stuff, I just kind of mess around with stuff until it looks cool, and that is the deeper meaning, the cool. So in regards to why I made videos in the first place, I talked about this in my first ever video. I made it about the rise of fascism in extreme metal. And so I started making that video just before the Christchurch shooting event. And when that happened, I almost didn't finish making the video because I felt kind of weird about it. But then when the imagery came out, the photos of his equipment and how it was all covered in far-right symbolism and kind of references and stuff. And there was a lot of that stuff that I had actually talked about in the video about how to, kind of like decode the visual language that some of these groups use. I realized that he'd had those photos up on his public Facebook and everything like that, and no one had really kind of figured out that that was some really nasty shit. So it kind of made me think like, more people need to understand this. They need to understand what these symbols mean, what these things are referencing, all that kind of stuff. And then so that kind of gave me the little push to actually finish that video and put it out. And and it kind of has just snowballed from there, from things that were in current events to things that I was interested in. Or I guess it's kind of like making a video is creating a conversation that I would like to have with someone. It's the kind of things that I'm interested at the time, and that's kind of it, really. Like, there's no ulterior motive or anything. At the moment, I don't have any pets. I would like a pet or two, maybe a cat or a small dog. We'll see. Next two questions I feel like maybe were sent by the same person, but we'll see. So, are there Maori in Aotearoa who glorify the killing of the Marion Dufresne and his crew, the Boyd Massacre and the Grass Cove killings, in the same way that certain Maori and other indigenous peoples glorify Captain Cook's death? So for this one, it's not something that I have seen personally. A lot of the time when I see these things mentioned, it's from far right or like white identitarian groups that are kind of I guess framing these incidents as like evidence of like, indigenous savagery or something like that, and that these people came in with good intentions and were like, met with an untimely fate or something like that. And even though some people like did come in and they did have intentions of peace and coexistence, a lot of the accounts that we actually have, especially the ones in a lot of history books and things, are based solely on the European, the Pakeha perspective and from their account. So they're like, you know, they'll report, oh, you know, like they were killed for no reason or it came out of nowhere or whatever, when they just weren't taking into account a lot of the actual like tribal law and kind of practices that a lot of these groups violated, a lot of really serious rules with Ahui, and you know, like a lot of the time it wasn't out of nowhere. It's just that perhaps Europeans didn't know exactly what they were doing. Some of them they definitely did. There were cases where they were warned, you know, there's a rahui here, don't go fishing, don't go swimming, don't take anything from here, and they were repeatedly violated. Things like that, where it's you can't go to an area and assume that you can do what you do at home there when you know, maybe people have different laws, different cultures, everything like that. And I think a lot of those cases are kind of rooted in that, whereas the Captain Cook thing is a whole completely different thing. So I don't think they're often compared in that way. Okay, and here's the other one that I think may be from the same person. Do you believe glorifying violence is ethical within certain contexts? And if so, should glorifying Captain Cook's killing be equated with glorifying capital punishment? Okay, so, I mean, I'm not a pacifist. I don't believe that there is any inherent virtue in nonviolence, and that, you know, like, I don't ever believe it's completely off the table, especially for, you know, resisting imperialism, colonialism, even, you know, like revolutionary movements and things like that. Like, it's part of a bigger tool set that some people use in different cases. When we're talking about resisting colonialism, when colonialism by itself is a violent act, even if it is done, you know, without shedding so much blood, the erasure of culture and stealing of land and all that kind of stuff is a form of violence and a form of oppression. So, I think it's a little bit different when we're talking about Cook, when we say that, because even though he was known for being particularly, like, not a nice guy, like, he has been reframed over the years as some kind of like noble navigator hero sort of thing, but historical records show that just isn't the case. A really great book that I recommend everyone checks out about this, regardless of where you sit on a political spectrum or anything, if you want to know the truth, a good one is this one, The Apotheosis of Captain Cook by Gananath Obayeskere. I think that's how you pronounce his name, I'm not sure. It's really good though, and it shows that at the time there were there was a lot of conversation, a lot of talk going back to Europe from Cook and his associates saying that they were treated like gods, and specifically like in Hawaii, they were, I think it was Lono, they were made to feel like they were an incarnation of this god, which is just not true whatsoever. And the native Hawaiians didn't feel that way at all. They didn't treat them in that way. It was just kind of, it was a combination of, I guess, a form of narcissism, but also these guys were writing letters to go back to Europe, not just to tell everyone what was up and what they had found there, but to be like, this is why we are uniquely the people that should be doing this expedition that you should continue to fund. They felt that if they were, you know, if they could convince the people back home that they were perceived as gods, then they should be the ones getting the money, getting the funding, getting the ships to continue these expeditions, as opposed to just someone else who maybe was in better favor or was, you know, whatever, like for whatever political reason. So there was this myth created around Cook, partially of his own invention, partially of other people in his crew and stuff, that, you know, he was like really worshipped in those areas when he just wasn't. He had a bad reputation for, you know, spreading syphilis, destroying culture, actually, so that these islands became kind of reliant on European trade routes and things like that. And yeah, it's hard to really communicate the damage that this did, not just to these disparate islands around the Pacific, to the people, but also to the culture. And yeah, going forward from there, it's kind of like there's nothing that you could really do to convince a lot of people in the Pacific that there's anything to do but end what he was doing. And that's the thing, like a lot of people say that, you know, he was killed unjustly or anything, but in Hawaii, it was, the people decided that this was the best thing to do. They all agreed on it, which is similar to capital punishment, you know? And I don't think that, I don't think it's something that you can chastise people for. And I think that it was kind of a flashpoint of people kind of asserting themselves and saying, like, this is a point where you've pushed us too far. And, you know, we need to end this now. And this is the best way we can do this to prevent future loss of life and loss of culture. So, you know, obviously, you know, like just killing people isn't great. You know, I don't endorse going out and killing your political enemies or whatever like that, but I totally get it. And I think that it should be celebrated as kind of like, you know, like almost like a day of independence or something like that. It's like, this is the day that, yeah, February 14th, they said, that's it, you know, guys gotta go. And you can't really call that savagery or anything when people in England and America were being killed for far less at the same time and continue to do so to this day, which is something that you don't really see, like in, you know, throughout Polynesia and the Pacific and stuff. Like, there's no real capital punishment anymore, but yeah, other parts of the world are still doing it, but then down here we're looked on as kind of more savage or primitive or for whatever reason. So yeah, I think that's something that people should definitely think about when they're making these comparisons as well. Anon asked, ASMR when? I honestly, I don't know about that one. We'll see. We'll see how desperate I get. Maybe I'll unlock like an extra Patreon tier, you know, like, but no, I don't know about that one. Blitz asked, cats or dogs? What's your fave video game? Also, have any music recommendations? Need more anti-fashion, anti-racist tunes in my life. I don't know. I like both cats and dogs. We grew up with both around the house. Like, so yeah, I don't know if it's fair to really pick one, you know? Yeah, I couldn't say. I mean, I do like having dogs around, but then I also think that cats are great too. In regards to my favorite video game, it's pretty hard to say because it changes all the time, but the one that has had the biggest impact on me in recent years was probably when I picked up the first Dark Souls game when it came out on Xbox way back in the day. And I picked it up before it kind of blew up because it was kind of a sleeper hit at the time. It came out to pretty little fanfare at first. So when I played it, there wasn't very much information about it online. I didn't know anyone else that had played it. So that combined with the kind of nature of the game, it really felt like I was exploring something unknown. And a lot of the vibe when I did jump online looking for stuff, it was a lot of people in the same kind of place. Like we were all trying to figure out this bigger picture together. So yeah, that experience really kind of stuck with me for that one. Yeah, and in regards to music recommendations, I did go over music recommendations in my first video for anti-fascist bands, but there were some that got left out just because I had to trim it down. So Mendacium are really good, like a kind of Black and Death band that instead of going for the usual kind of Norwegian kind of style of anti-Christianity or whatever, their stuff is focused more around like the American kind of evangelical megachurch kind of thing. So they're really cool. Who else? Allfather, Feminazgul, also very good. One band I also really like that aren't necessarily what you would call anti-fascist, but I feel like as an anti-colonial band or a band that deals with anti-colonial themes, they probably fit the description, is Gibao, who are a Tsimshian Native American war metal band. very good. A really good use of traditional instruments and dialects in, I guess, like a modern form of metal, war metal, which is very grim and dark. But they kind of they're not singing about imaginary fantasy bullshit like a lot of those guys are. They're singing about real shit. So that's really cool as well. Okay, another good one from Blitz. Another question. What's your fave native NZ animal and why? I quite like Kia because they're smart, cheeky little bastards. Okay, so it's hard to narrow it down, but I think I have two. One is the native falcon, the korearea, or the sparrowhawk as it's sometimes called. I like it because you see it a lot on road trips, and they're pretty cool, like when you see them flying, and also because they're a sparrowhawk, and I'm a huge Ligwin fan, so it's kind of like, you know. The other one is the tuna, the longfin eel. I have a totally, like, obsession with these guys. They're just awesome. Like, also just because we used to like see them a lot, like out of my parents' house when we were young and stuff. But also, they do this amazing thing that I found out where they all longfin eels at one point in their life swim out to the middle of the ocean. And there's two spots on Earth, one on our side, one on the other side. The spot over here is just south of Tonga. And they swim out there and they go super deep and they mate at the bottom, and then the new ones swim all the way back home. So all the ones that you see in New Zealand, they all go out to Tonga and come back. And they do it so deep that no one's even actually ever recorded them, like seen them doing it. It's just that, you know, they know the baby ones come back, which I think is really awesome because it raises so many questions about their navigation and what they're doing and how they've been doing this for so long. I think that's like, it's almost like this tradition that they do, which, yeah, I think is super fascinating. Another funny thing is that out by where I grew up, there's a lake that we used to skip school and go swimming in, and it's so deep that they hadn't really charted it. There's like an underwater river that goes into it and stuff, and a little while back they sent some probes down there to kind of figure out how deep it was, and they just couldn't chart the bottom of it purely because of eel density, which I think is kind of creepy and gross, but also really awesome. Okay, and Claudia asks, do you use a beard oil or other beard care? Not really, like nothing, no specific products or anything like that. I just kind of, it does its own thing and I just kind of trim it, keep it in line and stuff. But yeah, it is something that people have asked me before, so I must be doing something right. Anon asked, what is your opinion on the current Labour government of Aotearoa? Okay, so I do have a lot of thoughts. I'll keep it pretty brief though, but I am not a fan of the big parties in New Zealand in general. You know, Labour and National both have been pretty bad. Like at times they've both done good things, but most of the time I haven't really agreed with either of them. Never really wholeheartedly, even when I do. Labour does have a pretty poor track record for Māori and just in general, like for a lot of the Indigenous communities of the Pacific. But I mean, our government in general has a pretty bad track record. There have been attempts at reconciliation, and both parties, Labour and National, have both taken steps at times that, you know, like have been viewed as positive things. But yeah, I would never say that I supported either of them for being the best option. There have been times when I voted for Labour candidates because I was voting strategically. I vote on the Māori roll, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, in Te Tai Tokerau, which is the electorate that I vote in, yeah, I voted for Labour candidates in there. But that being said, I would have preferred other candidates to stand there that I could have maybe supported better. But yeah, it's kind of slim pickings for us at the moment. And in general, I think that the current government, led by Jacinda Ardern, is kind of, they promised quite a lot and they haven't exactly delivered a lot on it. I think Jacinda Ardern was the best candidate for Prime Minister at the time, and I'm extremely glad we didn't end up with Simon Bridges. I feel like that would have been pretty bad. And while there have been steps taken by the current Labour government to address a lot of stuff and kind of, I guess, address past failings, there are a lot of things that a lot of people have felt pretty lacking. Their response to Ihumātao and how that's like an ongoing thing, that was pretty weak, especially compared to a lot of other things that the government gave a lot more time to. Yeah, so I would say if I had really hoped that they were going to be the transformative government that they promised, I would be upset, but I didn't really have that initial faith in them in the first place. In terms of our current government, as it is at the moment, I feel that Marama Davidson, the co-leader of the Greens Party, is probably my favorite person in a position of power at the moment. I'm not a big fan of James Shaw, the other co-leader. I think he's kind of, he's like kind of the neoliberal influence, whereas Marama has been on the front line in a lot of protest movements consistently over the years and has given time to a lot of people that had things that needed to be heard. So yeah, as far as people embedded in the institution, I think she's great, and she's definitely a person that I would give time to and support them having more power within the institution as it exists now. Anon asks, what are some persistent microaggressions you wish more people realized were a problem? Are there any from other cultures that caught you off guard and you wish more people knew about? Okay, this is an interesting one. I feel that maybe a lot of ableist things are really something that we need to spend more time discussing. Like, we've been talking a lot about race and gender and a lot of discussions about, I guess, like intersectionality, like the way that kind of different oppressions can kind of intersect with class and everything like that. But I think that disabilities and that kind of discussions about different disabilities often get left behind a little bit, or they don't get given as much of time of day as a lot of others do. And I feel like that is something that is something we need to bring more awareness to and kind of elevate a lot of these voices, because there are people out there doing that work and having those discussions. But yeah, they're just not getting the platform that I think they deserve. And not to take anything away from any of the other, groups that are out there campaigning and stuff like that. But I feel like, yeah, it's something that we really need to pay a little bit more attention to. And finally, Anon asked again, what is the ultimate goal for your channel? Is there something you aim to achieve with it, and where would you like to see it in a year's time? Okay, I didn't really start this channel with an ultimate goal, and I don't really have one in mind at the moment. The idea was always just to create things to, I guess, engage with people and educate them in a way that I feel like when I was looking at YouTube content and other things, I didn't really feel like I engaged with a lot of things because the style of rhetoric and content and even the aesthetics wasn't really so appealing to me. So I just created the kind of stuff that I would relate to. And I hope that other people kind of relate to it in the same way. And I mean, I guess it's been really good so far. I haven't had this channel for even a year yet. I think it's only been like 9 or 10 months, and I've already got like a bunch of followers that, and I get consistently good feedback. So I feel like there must be something going on there that people are relating to, which is really cool. Because, yeah, there's always that anxiety when I first began it. I thought, is this something worth doing? Will people like it or whatever? And I saw someone say somewhere their advice was that if you wanted to do this kind of content, you should just make 10 videos and then see how you go from there. And at that point, you'll kind of know whether it's for you, and you'll have figured out if people are responding to it or whatever. And so, yeah, I guess this is my 10th video, and, a couple thousand subscribers and stuff, a bunch of people on Patreon. And yeah, I think I would say by most metrics, it's kind of working out all right. So I guess I'll just continue to do this, and with no ultimate goal in mind, just keep ticking along. And yeah, as long as I feel like I'm still doing something that I enjoy and something that I am really, at least somewhat kind of feeling like it is contributing to some kind of greater discussion, then I'll just keep doing it. And I mean, you know, it might change. At some point I might decide to change direction with the channel or whatever. I do definitely want to explore more kind of artistic avenues with it. But yeah, I'm pretty happy just kind of doing what I'm doing at the moment. So yeah, like I can't really say that I have a blueprint or a roadmap for where I want to be in a year's time. But yeah, I mean, if things keep going, I keep making videos at this kind of pace and keep picking up subscribers and stuff like that, I'd be happy with that. So that's pretty much it. That's all 20 questions. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you liked it and you learned a little bit about me or whatever. Yeah, so it's been really awesome making these videos and everything. And I think the next one that I'm working on is one that I've been kind of tossing around for a little while, about the concept of modern masculinity and how people engage with it. And it's going to be probably a bigger one, so it might take a little bit longer to get out, but it's going to have filmed stuff like this, and it's going to have more animated kind of stuff. So it's probably the most ambitious project that I've put together so far. But yeah, I think it'll probably be one of the most rewarding so far as well. And I've already reached out to a bunch of cool creators that I kind of want to collaborate with in some regard. I'm not sure exactly how yet, but yeah, so stay tuned for that. If you want more regular updates, if you jump onto my Patreon, I try and update it as much as possible with little behind the scenes things, like little screenshots of sequences as I'm putting them together. Even people ask me a lot about like editing on there, and I teach people about what goes into like behind the scenes stuff, like how I compose different scenes and sequences, whether it's in 2D, 3D or whatever. So yeah, check that out if that's interesting to you. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks to all my Patreon supporters and my subscribers. I'll see you next time.